¿Qué hace, bebé? What is the purpose of dynamic dampers on crankshaft? They reduce engine vibration. What types of bearings are generally found in reciprocating engines? Plain ball and roller bearings. Are the connecting rods used in each cylinder of a radial engine the same? Explain. No. Radial engines use masted rod assembly and articulating rod assemblies. Name the different types of piston rings. Oil control, compressors, and oil scraper. Where should piston ring gaps be installed relative to each other and why? Compression rings gaps should be installed staggered so they do not align. This to prevent excessive blow-by. What could result from incorrectly installed piston rings? Excessive oil consumption. What purpose do oil control rings serve? Regulate the thicknesses of the oil film on the cylinder walls. What is used to help prevent valve surge or floating in an aircraft engine? Two or more springs used in each valve. On engines equipped with hydraulic valve lifters, what should be the running valve clearance be? 0. What is the purpose of a valve overlap? Cooling the cylinder internally, circulating the incoming fuel-air mixture. Listo. Ese fue Reciprocating Engines. Ok, trequetuca. Tele. Ok, ahora va Reciprocating Engine Operation, Instrument, Maintenance, and Overhaul. What indications are given in the event of a leaking or open primer while the engine is running? The engine will not idle properly. A cold cylinder is found when troubleshooting a running engine. What does this indicate? No combustion in that cylinder. When pulling a propeller through, a hissing sound is heard, indicating valve blow-by. What procedure should be performed next? A compression check should be performed to identify the faulty cylinder. What is the purpose of performing a compression test? To determine if valves pistons, and rings are sealing properly. When an engine is overhauled, how is its total time affected? When an engine is rebuilt, how is its operating history affected? The total time on the engine must be continued and overhauled. It's entered into the engine logbook. If the manufacturer rebuilds the engine, it is granted a zero-time status, and it's considered to have no previous operating history. What inspection should be performed after propeller strike without sudden stoppage? Inspect engine mounts, the crankcase, nose section for damage, oil and oil filters for metal particles, crankshafts for cracks and misalignment. Name some of the precautions that should be performed prior to engine removal. Disconnect battery, turn off fuel valves, check wheels, install a tail stand if necessary. When inspecting a piston, where are cracks most likely to be found? Highly stressed areas, base of piston bosses, inside the junctions of the bore, orificio, and the walls, and ring lands. What does it mean if an engine part is within serviceable limits? The part is within manufacturer limits, so does not require replacement. What tool or instruments are used to inspect a cylinder barrel for out of friendliness? A dial indicator or micrometer. How can a loose stud in an engine crankcase be repaired? Remove the loose stud and inspect the hole for size and thread condition. It might be necessary to use an oversized stud or use a helicoil insert. What publication is used to check an engine for normal operation? The manufacturer's maintenance menu. A weak cylinder is found during a compression check. What must be inspected? That the pressure is transmitted equally in all directions. What purpose does an oil analysis serve? Metal particles in the oil to determine normal or abnormal wear of the engine. Evaluating engine's internal condition. What inspection should be performed on an engine that has been in storage? Inspection for corrosion damage. Where would a carburetor air temperature bulb be located? In the ram air intake duct. Basic components of a fuel indicator system. The transmitter and the indicator. What unit of measure is generally used to indicate fuel flow? Pounds or gallons per hour. Why is fuel flow monitored? To determine fuel consumption and engine performance. What does the manifold gauge indicate and how is it calibrated? It measures absolute pressure in the engine manifold and it's calibrated in inches of mercury. What directly controls manifold pressure? Throttle opening and engine RPM. During engine operation, where should the propeller control be set when checking the manifold pressure? Low pitch and high RPM. Is the aircraft electrical system required to power a cylinder head temperature gauge? No, a thermocouple is used as electrical source. What are the possible indications of an oil pressure transmitter or indicator malfunction? A severe or sudden drop in oil pressure while the oil temperature remains normal and oil supply remains full. What does a tachometer indicate on a reciprocating engine RPM? Where should the thermocouple be installed on a reciprocating engine using a single proof cylinder head temperature system? On the hottest cylinder. Okay. Now, turbine engines. Explain the main difference and advantage of turbofan over turbojet engines. A turbofan engines use a fan to bypass some air around the engine to provide thrust. The advantage that this provides additional thrust without increasing fuel flow. Name the major components in a gas turbine engine. Air inlet, compression section, combustion section, turbine section, exhaust section, and gearbox and accessory section. What determines the amount of airflow through a turbine engine? The forward speed of the aircraft, compressor speed, and air density. Name the two types of compressor commonly used in turbine engines. Axial and centrifugal flow compressor. Name two different methods for attaching turbine engine rotor blades to the rotor discs. Bulb type rod, feed tree rod, dovetail type rod. What is a split compressor system? Also called dual or twin compressors, connected to the turbine section with two rotor shafts, one inside the other. What are the different types of combustion chambers used in turbine engines? Annular, canannular, and reverse flow annular. What prevents the combustion chambers from burning? Cooling air along the inside of the liner. What is the purpose of interconnecting tubes attached between can-type combustion chambers? For flame propagation during start. How is thermal stress relieved on a turbine disk? By directing bleed air onto face of the disk or through grooves. What are carbon seals used for in turbine engines? Uses as oil seals for the rotor shaft bearings. What is shaft horsepower? Indication of torque developed by turboprop or turboshaft engine. Name the main components of a typical APU. A small power turbine for power and bleed air, and electrical generator. When is the greatest demand placed on an APU? When supplying bleed air. How is an APU generally started? With an electrical starter and battery power. Where does the APU get its fuel supply? From the AC or aircraft fuel tanks. At what speed does a gas turbine APU operate, and how is this speed maintained? At or near its rated speed, regardless electrical or pneumatic load imposed. The APU fuel control adjusts fuel flow to maintain rated speed. What is used to prevent a heavily loaded APU from exceeding its maximum EGT? A load control valve modulates pneumatic load to maintain EGT into limits. How is an APU shut down, and why is this procedure used? Unload APU closing bleed air valve. Run for a specified time to EGT cooling, usually 3 minutes. And why? If shut down without cooling, damage could occur. What powers the variable inlet guide vanes IGV used on some APUs to regulate compressor intake airflow? Fuel pressure. What is a fan blade shingling? It's the overlapping of the mid-span shafts of a fan blade. Shafts of a fan blade. When a turbofan or turbojet engine is shut down, what should a mechanic listen for during coast down? Any rubbing sounds or unusual noises. Ok, capítulo 4. Turbine Engine Operation, Instrument, Maintenance, and Overhaul. Why are compressor washes performed and what methods are commonly used? To remove any contamination of the compressor section, to improve engine performance. Methods used are fluid wash and abrasive grit wash. How can you tell if a turbofan or turbojet engine is out of trim? High EGT for takeoff. Name the different types of compressor blade damage that might be found during inspections. Dents, cracks, gouging, pitting, scratches, burrs, burns, gouges. What kind of markers can be used to mark the parts in hot and cold section during repair? Chalk, felt tip marker, and layout die. How does relative humidity affect turbine engines? Insignificant effect. What criteria determines replacement of life-limited turbine engine components? Cycles, hours, and/or calendar time. If turbine blades are removed from a turbine disc, why should they be reinstalled in the same location? To maintain balance of the turbine wheel. How are gas turbine engine tachometers calibrated? They are calibrated in percent RPM. RPM. On a turbine engine, what is the engine pressure ratio and what does it indicate? The EPR is the ratio between total inlet pressure and total turbine exhaust pressure to indicate thrust developed by the engine. On a turbine engine, what does exhaust gas temperature EGT indicate and how is it obtained? EGT is the average of the turbine discharge gases. Is obtained by thermocouples placed near the turbine exit. Can the EGT system on a turbine engine be checked without running the engine? Yes, by checking the resistance of the thermocouples and circuits. My life.